My name is Zintari Velnokin, and I have been a xenobiologist for the Galactic Senate for, well, let's just say longer than most species have had written language. In my 347 years of service, I have catalogued over 12,000 species, witnessed the rise and fall of 17 civilizations, and survived 4 galactic wars. I thought I had seen everything the universe could throw at us. I was wrong. Spectacularly, hilariously, terrifyingly wrong. It all started 6 months ago, when our Deep Space Reconnaissance Probe designation Scout Prime 7749 detected an unusual energy signature from a small, blue-green planet in the Outer Rim territories. The planet was orbiting a rather unremarkable yellow star, third from the Sun, in what the inhabitants apparently called Earth. Another primitive species, I muttered to myself as I reviewed the initial data streams. The preliminary scans showed they were still using chemical propulsion, had only just figured out nuclear fission, and were somehow managing to slowly poison their own atmosphere. Standard developing civilization stuff, really. Nothing we hadn't seen 1,000 times before, or so I thought. The first red flag should have been when our probe got too close to their satellite network. Not because they detected it, oh no, that would have been impressive but normal. The red flag was that they had managed to clutter their orbital space with so much debris that our probe nearly collided with a defunct communications satellite from the year they called 1987. "Commander Velnokin," came the gravelly voice of Senior Analyst Corinth Stexmally from across the lab. "You need to see this." Corinth was a Veltarian, think 8 feet tall, purple skin, and 4 arms that moved independently. He had been analyzing xenological data since before I was hatched, and in all that time I had never heard his voice crack with. Was that amusement? Or terror? With Corinth, it was hard to tell. I floated over to his workstation, the benefits of being from a low-gravity world, and peered at his holographic display. The data was confusing. "They have how many active conflicts?" I asked, double-checking the translation algorithms. 47 major ones, 213 minor border disputes, and, Corinth paused, his secondary arms clicking nervously, according to their global network, approximately 15,000 individual arguments happening on something they call social media at any given moment. I blinked all 3 of my eyes in succession. They are fighting each other while simultaneously broadcasting their disagreements to the entire planet. "It gets better," Corinth continued, his mandibles clicking in what I had learned to recognize as suppressed laughter. "They also have something called sports, where they gather in massive groups to watch other members of their species engage in ritualized combat, but then become violently upset when their preferred warriors lose. This was unusual. Most species we encountered had either achieved planetary peace before developing global communications or had destroyed themselves trying. These humans seemed to be doing both simultaneously. "There's more," Corinth said, manipulating the hologram to show a new data set. Their information networks contain detailed instructions for creating devastating weapons, recipes for food, mating rituals, scientific research, and something called memes that appear to be humorous images with text. I rubbed my sensory tendrils, the Kaltorian equivalent of a headache coming on. "They are sharing weapon designs openly?" Well, that's not even the concerning part. They also have detailed plans for space travel, artificial intelligence, genetic manipulation, and what appears to be theoretical frameworks for faster-than-light travel. Now that got my attention. "Show me those FTL theories." The hologram shifted to display human scientific papers. I scanned through them quickly, a skill you develop after centuries of xenological work, and felt my respiratory sacs constrict. "Corinth," I said slowly, "some of these theoretical frameworks are actually quite sophisticated." "I know. And they have published them on their global network for anyone to access." "I know. Then. And they are still fighting each other over which invisible sky being they prefer to worship." "I know." Corinth's voice carried a note of exhausted bewilderment that perfectly matched my own feelings. This was when I made my first mistake. I decided to recommend a full Senate evaluation of humanity. The Senate chamber on Nexus Prime was, as always, a chaos of different atmospheric requirements, gravitational preferences, and communication methods. The gaseous collective floated in their containment spheres. The hive queens communicated through pheromone releases that our translation systems converted to text, and the machine consciousness flickered between various android bodies as the mood struck them. I stood at the central podium, my report floating before me in holographic form, and began what I thought would be a routine presentation. Esteemed senators, I began, following the traditional protocols, I present for your consideration the species designation human from planet Earth, a sector designation Milky Way local group. Senator Vrex Halon, a massive insectoid from the Chetanus Republic, clicked his approval mandibles. Another standard primitive evaluation, I assume? Well, not exactly standard, Senator. The chamber fell silent. In my 3 centuries of service, I had never used those words before. Please elaborate, xenobiologist Vel Nokken, came the synthesized voice of the machine consciousness. I activated the first data stream. Humans have achieved a fascinating combination of technological advancement and social discord. They possess nuclear weapons capable of destroying their own planet. Yet they also use this same technology to power their cities. They have a global communication network that connects every individual on their planet, yet they primarily use it to argue with each other and share images of small carnivorous mammals. A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. Senator Trill Yimoth, speaking for the Aquatic Confederation, bubbled a question through her translation device. Are you saying they have the capability for self-destruction but choose not to use it? It's more complicated than that, I replied, bringing up the next data set. They have a concept called mutually assured destruction where they maintain peace through the threat of total annihilation. They have calculated that everyone dies if anyone starts a nuclear war, so nobody starts one. The silence in the chamber was deafening. They maintain peace through the promise of mutual extinction. From the gaseous collective, their voice carrying notes of what I could only describe as horrified fascination. That's just the beginning, I continued. Their military history shows a pattern of rapid technological advancement during periods of conflict. They invented powered flight, advanced metallurgy, rocket propulsion, computer systems, and medical technologies at an accelerated pace whenever they were trying to kill each other more efficiently. Senator Kral Voss of the warrior clans leaned forward, his battle scars catching the chamber's ambient light. Are you telling us that they become more advanced when they fight? Essentially, yes. But here's where it gets interesting. They also become more advanced when they are trying to heal the damage they have caused. They have developed medicine that can replace entire organs, technology that can cure diseases that once killed millions, and agricultural techniques that can feed billions. I paused for effect, then activated the display that I knew would get their attention. They have also developed something they call entertainment. They create fictional scenarios of galactic conquest, alien invasions, and interstellar war for fun. The hologram showed images from human movies and games, massive space battles, alien creatures, heroes saving the galaxy against impossible odds. They fantasize about meeting us, I said quietly. And in most of their fantasies they win. Now the chamber erupted. Senators were speaking, clicking, bubbling, and humming all at once. I waited for the noise to die down before continuing. There's more, much more. I brought up the final data set, the one that had kept me awake for 3 straight cycles. They have a concept called science fiction where they explore theoretical futures. In these stories, they regularly encounter civilizations more advanced than themselves. I paused, making sure I had everyone's attention. And in the vast majority of these scenarios, humanity either defeats the advanced civilizations, befriends them, or assimilates their technology and surpasses them. The silence returned, heavier this time. But surely, Senator Vrex Halon clicked nervously, these are just primitive fantasies? I nodded slowly. That's what I thought too, until I realized that many of their current technologies were first described in these fantasies decades or even centuries before they developed them. Satellites, submarines, rocket ships, global communication networks, artificial intelligence, all of it was imagined in their fiction before it became reality. What are you saying, Velnoken? The machine consciousness's voice carried an edge I had never heard before. I'm saying they dream about the future, and then they build it. They imagine meeting alien civilizations, and then they develop the technology to reach the stars. They create stories about becoming the dominant force in the galaxy. I let the sentence hang in the air. And? Prompted Senator Trill Yemoth. And their stories always end with them winning. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it felt different. This time it felt like the silence before a storm. Senator Krall Voss spoke first. What is your recommendation, xenobiologist? This was the moment. The moment that would change everything. I recommend immediate quarantine of the human species. No contact, no interference, no acknowledgement of their existence. We maintain a monitoring station at a safe distance and we wait. Wait for what? Asked the gaseous collective. We wait to see if they destroy themselves first or if they figure out faster than light travel. And if they achieve FTL? Senator Vrexhellon's mandibles were clicking rapidly now, a sign of extreme agitation. I looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of every senator present. Then we hope they remember their fantasies fondly, because in every single story they tell about meeting aliens, they always find a way to come out on top. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was classified as a potential galactic threat, and Earth was placed under immediate quarantine. As I walked out of the Senate chamber that day, I thought we had made the right decision. I thought we were being appropriately cautious. I thought we had bought ourselves time to figure out how to handle this strange, contradictory, fascinating species. I was wrong about that too. 3 months later, our monitoring station detected an energy signature unlike anything we had ever seen. It wasn't chemical propulsion. It wasn't nuclear. It wasn't even based on any theoretical framework in our vast databases. It was something entirely new. And it was coming from Earth. The emergency klaxon in our monitoring station sounded like a dying vortac, which, trust me, is not a pleasant sound at the best of times. I had been enjoying a peaceful meal of fermented algae strips when the alarm started, and now those strips were floating around the zero-gravity section of our station like tiny green confetti. Well, knocken to the command center, immediately. The voice belonged to Station Commander Urix Valthorn, a veteran Kaltorian whose calm demeanor had seen us through 3 different first-contact scenarios. If Urix was shouting, something was very, very wrong. I propelled myself through the station's corridors, past the humming monitoring equipment that had been faithfully watching Earth for the past 3 months. When I reached the command center, I found organized chaos. Every sensor screen was flashing, every communication array was active, and every member of our 12-person crew was frantically working at their stations. Report, I said, trying to sound more composed than I felt. The energy signature we detected isn't just unknown. Urix began without preamble. It's impossible. According to our instruments, the humans have somehow created a stable space-time distortion that's allowing them to fold space around their vessel. I floated closer to the main display, watching the sensor data stream past. That's not possible. They don't have the mathematical framework for that level of... Commander, interrupted sensor specialist Drac Tommins, his 4 eyes wide with what could only be described as panic. The vessel, it's not following any flight path we can predict. What do you mean? Urix asked. I mean, it's jumping randomly through space. One moment it's near their moon, the next it's by their outer planets, then back to their asteroid belt. It's like they are. Drac paused, checking his readings again. It's like they are experimenting. Of course they were experimenting. Of course. Because why would humans do anything the safe, logical, carefully planned way when they could just try things and see what happened? How long until they reach our position? I asked, though part of me already dreaded the answer. At their current rate of experimentation, approximately 6 hours. Maybe less if they figure out whatever it is they are trying to figure out. I rubbed my sensory tendrils again. The headache was definitely getting worse. Urix, I said slowly, we need to contact the Senate immediately. Already tried. The humans' first space-fold attempt created some kind of subspace interference. Our long-range communications are down. Perfect. Just perfect. We were about to make first contact with a species that the Galactic Senate had classified as a potential threat. We had no way to call for backup. And said species had apparently managed to crack faster than light travel in the 3 months since we'd quarantined them. Options? I asked. We could retreat to a safe distance, suggested Urix. Or, added Drac, his voice carrying a note of scientific curiosity that I found deeply concerning. We could observe their approach and document humanity's first successful FTL voyage for the historical record. I looked around the command center at my crew, 12 of the galaxy's finest zonologists, all looking at me expectantly. These were beings who had dedicated their lives to studying alien species, who had signed up for this assignment knowing full well that first contact situations could be unpredictable. All right, I said, making what was probably the second worst decision of my career. Observe. But at the first sign of hostile intent, we retreat. Understood. The next 6 hours were simultaneously the longest and shortest of my life. We watched as the human vessel, which appeared to be roughly cylindrical with various protrusions that served no obvious aerodynamic purpose, continued its erratic jumps through their solar system. Sometimes it would appear for just a few seconds before vanishing again. Other times it would hover in one location for several minutes, as if its occupants were having a discussion about where to go next. They are learning, observed Communications Officer Lyra Zendak, a telepathic species who specialized in analyzing behavioral patterns. Each jump is more controlled than the last. They are figuring out their own technology in real time. That was actually more terrifying than impressive. Most species took decades to master FTL travel once they achieved it. Humans were apparently going to master it in an afternoon. Commander Drac called out, "The vessel has stopped jumping. It's heading directly for our position." Stealth mode, Urix ordered immediately. All non-essential systems offline. Our station dimmed as we shifted to passive observation mode. In theory, we should be invisible to their sensors. In theory. Distance? I asked. 2 million kilometers and closing. Speed is, wait, that can't be right. What? They are accelerating. Continuously. Without any apparent reaction mass. I felt my respiratory sacs constrict again. They have figured out reactionless drive? In 6 hours? It appears so. Time to intercept is now 47 minutes. 47 minutes to figure out what to do when humanity made first contact with the Galactic Senate. No pressure at all. 20 minutes later, things got worse. Commander. Drac's voice had gone up an octave. They are scanning us. Impossible. Urix replied automatically. We are in full stealth mode. Not anymore. They are using some kind of gravitational sensor array. They have mapped our entire station. The main screen lit up with a 3-dimensional representation of our monitoring station, accurate down to the smallest details. Even our individual crew members showed up as distinct biosignatures. How did they? I began. Incoming transmission, interrupted Lyra, audio and visual. They are trying to communicate. On screen, Urix commanded. The display flickered, and suddenly we were looking at the interior of the human vessel. 3 humans sat in what appeared to be their command center, though it looked more like someone had taken a traditional starship bridge and redesigned it by committee. 1 human appeared to be female, with dark hair and wearing what looked like a blue uniform. The other 2 were male, one with graying hair and the other younger with an easy smile. The female human spoke first, and our translation systems immediately began working on her language. Greetings, unknown vessel. I am Captain Sarah Valdez of the Earthship Pioneer. We detected your observation post and Well, we thought it was about time we introduced ourselves. I exchanged glances with Yurix. The human was speaking as if secret alien monitoring stations were a perfectly normal thing to stumble across. The older male human leaned forward. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, Pioneer's science officer. We have been aware of your presence for the past 2 months, but we wanted to get our FTL drive working before we said hello. Seemed like the polite thing to do. They had known about us for 2 months. And they had just left us alone while they worked on their technology. The younger male grinned, an expression our xenological database indicated was positive. I'm Lieutenant Jake Morrison, pilot, and generally the guy who has to explain why our ship doesn't follow the laws of physics anymore. Speaking of which, mind if I ask what species you are? Our databases have some theories, but we'd rather not make assumptions. They want to know what species we are, Lyra translated unnecessarily. I heard, I replied. Then, after a moment of internal debate, I nodded to Yurix. Open a channel. The human's expressions brightened noticeably when our transmission began. Greetings, humans of the vessel Pioneer, I began, falling back on standard first contact protocols. I am xenobiologist Centauri Vel Nokkin of the Galactic Senate Monitoring Station Outpost 7. This is Station Commander Yurix Valthorn. We have been observing your species' development. Captain Valdez nodded as if this was perfectly reasonable. We figured as much. The gravitational anomalies around your station were pretty obvious once we developed our new sensor arrays. Dr. Webb leaned forward. If you don't mind me asking, how long have you been watching us? Approximately 3 standard months, Yurix replied. And before that? I hesitated. We became aware of your species 6 months ago. Lieutenant Morrison laughed, another positive expression. According to our database. So you have been watching us for half a year, and in that time we went from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. I bet that was interesting. You could say that, I admitted. Captain Valdez stood up from her chair and walked closer to the camera. Xenobiologist Vel Nokkin, I'm going to be direct here. We know you are not the only ones out there. Our radio telescopes have detected artificial signals from dozens of star systems. We know there's a galactic community of some kind, and we know we are not part of it yet. The honesty was unexpected. We also know, Dr. Webb continued, that our rapid technological development probably looks concerning from the outside. In the past 6 months, we have had breakthroughs in fusion power, artificial intelligence, gravitational manipulation, and quantum computing. Any one of those achievements would normally take a species decades to develop. So here's our question, Captain Valdez said, her expression serious. Are you here to welcome us to the galactic community, or are you here to make sure we don't become a threat to it? The question hung in the air like a gravity bomb waiting to explode. I looked at Yurix, who gave me a slight nod. These humans deserved honesty. The latter, I admitted. The Galactic Senate has classified humanity as a potential threat and placed your world under quarantine. But instead of anger or outrage, Lieutenant Morrison just grinned wider. Well, that's fair. We probably are a threat. Jake, Captain Valdez admonished. What? Come on, Captain. Look at what we accomplished in 6 months. Look at this ship. We built it in 3 weeks using principles we figured out last Tuesday. Any sane galactic government would be nervous about us. Dr. Webb nodded thoughtfully. He has a point. From an outside perspective, our rate of development is probably alarming. It is, I confirmed. So what happens now? Captain Valdez asked. That was the question, wasn't it? Standard protocol would be to retreat and report to the Senate. But these humans had already demonstrated that they could track our invisible station and develop FTL travel faster than should be physically possible. Retreating might just delay the inevitable. Now, I said, making what was definitely the worst decision of my career, I think we need to talk. 2 hours later, I found myself aboard the human vessel Pioneer, sitting in what they called their conference room and trying to process everything I had learned. The The humans had not just developed FTL travel, they had developed 3 different methods of FTL travel, and they were working on a 4th. They had not just cracked artificial intelligence, they had created an AI that was apparently helping them design better technology faster than they could build it. They had not just achieved fusion power, they had miniaturized it to the point where their ship's power plant could fit in a closet. The thing is, Dr. Webb was explaining, we have always been good at taking existing ideas and improving them rapidly. But lately, it's like someone turned up the speed dial on human innovation. What do you mean? I asked. Captain Valdez activated a holographic display. 3 months ago, our best computer scientists estimated that human-level artificial intelligence was still 20 years away. 2 weeks later, our AI was helping us design better computers. 6 weeks ago, we thought faster-than-light travel was theoretically impossible. Last week, we were testing our 3rd FTL prototype. But how? Wow! Lieutenant Morrison grinned. Because we stopped trying to understand everything before we built it. We started building things to see if they would work, and then figured out why they worked afterward. That was actually terrifying. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You develop technology by experimenting with it rather than by understanding it first? Sometimes, Dr. Webb admitted. It's not our preferred method, but it's been remarkably effective recently. And this doesn't concern you? Oh, it terrifies us, Captain Valdez said cheerfully. But it also works. I spent the next hour learning about human approaches to problem solving, and by the end of it, I understood why the Senate had been right to classify them as a threat. Not because humans were violent or aggressive, though they certainly could be, but because they approached the universe with a combination of curiosity, determination, and complete disregard for the word impossible that was genuinely frightening. So, Captain Valdez said as our meeting wound down, what happens when you report back to your Senate? I honestly don't know, I replied. This situation is unprecedented. Well, Lieutenant Morrison said, if it helps, we don't want to conquer the galaxy or anything. We just want to meet everyone and see what's out there. And learn from other species, Dr. Webb added. Human science advances through collaboration and shared knowledge. And maybe help solve some problems, Captain Valdez concluded. We are pretty good at fixing things that seem unfixable. I looked around the conference room at these 3 humans who had casually revolutionized space travel in an afternoon and realized something important. The Galactic Senate had been absolutely right to call humanity a threat. But they had been wrong about what kind of threat humans represented. Humans weren't dangerous because they might conquer the galaxy. They were dangerous because they might save it, whether the galaxy wanted to be saved or not. They were dangerous because they looked at problems that had stumped civilizations for millennia and said, have you tried this? They were dangerous because they combined the curiosity of scientists, the determination of explorers, and the problem-solving skills of engineers who had learned that impossible just meant nobody's figured it out yet. As I prepared to return to our monitoring station and compose what would probably be the most important report in Senate history, Captain Valdez walked me to their airlock. Xenobiologist Velnokin, she said, I want you to know that whatever your Senate decides, humanity appreciates your honesty today. And if they decide to give us a chance, we promise we will try not to break too many of the universe's rules while we are figuring things out. I looked at this human, this representative of a species that had achieved in months what most civilizations took centuries to accomplish, and realized that the galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. Captain Valdez, I replied, I have a feeling that breaking the universe's rules is exactly what the galaxy needs. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Senate voted to lift humanity's quarantine and extend an invitation for Earth to join the galactic community. The vote was unanimous, though several senators noted that they were voting more out of curiosity than confidence. Humanity accepted the invitation immediately and then promptly asked if there were any unsolved engineering problems they could help with. As it turned out, there were quite a few. And as it turned out, the Senate had been absolutely right about humanity being a threat to the established order. They just hadn't realized that sometimes The established order needed threatening.